Goma, Democratic Republic of Congo. On Monday, M23 rebels backed by Rwandan troops entered the city of Goma, in eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. They have now taken control of the city, and on Thursday, in their first press conference, declared that they were here to stay. They raised the prospect of further expansion of territory under their control. DRC's government has called the takeover a declaration of war by neighboring Rwanda. Goma, a regional hub of over 2 million people, is on the DRC's border with Rwanda. The city has been afflicted by the ebb and flow of violence for 3 decades, collateral damage in conflicts that exploded in eastern Congo after the 1994 Rwandan genocide. The capture of Goma is a dramatic culmination of over 3 years of conflict in North Kivu province. The M23 is now threatening to march all the way to Kinshasa, the DRC capital, in a conflict that could have seismic impacts across Central Africa. Here is what to know. The M23 is one of dozens of armed groups active in eastern DRC, where militias have sown chaos for over 3 decades. The conflict is a legacy of multi-state wars that played out in Congo after the 1994 Rwandan genocide, in which as many as 1 million people, mainly of the Tutsi ethnic group, were killed by Hutu extremists. Tutsi rebels led by current Rwandan President Paul Kagame put an end to the killing, and many Hutu perpetrators fled across the border into Congo. The M23, or March 23 movement, refers to the date of an earlier peace agreement the group claims the Congolese government failed to honor. The rebel group, led by Congolese Tutsi commanders, formed in 2012 and is a successor to earlier Tutsi-led rebellions. It briefly captured Goma the same year before being driven out. Desperately poor, but rich in minerals used in electronics and mobile phones, eastern Congo is ethnically diverse. Many militias have origins in specific local communities. After years of lying dormant, the M23 relaunched its rebellion in North Kivu in late 2021, capturing territory including a key border crossing into Uganda. By January 2022, it had mostly surrounded Goma, leaving a pocket of government-controlled territory around the city. The conflict ebbed and flowed, with the rebels pushing farther north. This month, it expanded into the neighboring province of South Kivu. It completed the encirclement of Goma and began to push inside the city. M23 leaders say that they are fighting to protect ethnic minorities against a DRC government they accuse of fomenting hate speech and discrimination. Another key demand is the return of Congolese Tutsi refugees, many of whom live in Uganda and Rwanda, to Congo. The DRC government, however, considers the M23 a puppet of Rwandan interests. President Felix Tshisekedi has vowed to retake Goma. "We will fight and we will triumph," he said in an address to the nation on Wednesday. The region, with its large reserves of wealth, offers other opportunities to the rebels. With the capture of Goma, the M23 now has access to a key border city and a critical mineral smuggling route into Rwanda. A 2024 United Nations report estimated that the rebels smuggled at least 150 metric tons of coltan used in electronics into Rwanda last year. Rwanda provides material support to the M23, according to several reports by an independent panel of United Nations experts. It has troops in North Kivu up to 4,000, according to the UN panel reports, and its special forces oversee M23 units. Drone imagery has captured troops regularly crossing the border into M23-controlled territory for years. Rwanda has also deployed high-tech military equipment on the battlefield in North Kivu, including as mobile air defense systems and precision-guided munitions. The United Nations, including Security Council members such as the US, France, and the United Kingdom, agree that Rwandan forces are operating in Congo. Rwanda's government, however, has never publicly admitted to being involved. Rwanda says the conflict has deeper roots that need to be addressed. They claim that militias such as the Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda, FDLR, a Hutu rebel group which includes some of those responsible for the Rwandan genocide, are still active in eastern Congo. Rwanda accuses the Congolese army of fighting alongside them, an accusation the Congolese deny. The humanitarian impact of the M23 conflict has been enormous. Over 1 million people have been displaced over the years, with hundreds of thousands camping in dire conditions on the outskirts of Goma. Sexual violence, hunger, and disease plague the camps, despite the efforts of aid groups. The conflict now threatens to spiral, raising the specter of a replay of the two Congo wars between 1996 and 1997 and 1998 and the early 2000s, which various researchers estimate led to 3 million to over 5 million deaths. During those two wars, 9 African nations and some 20 armed groups fought each other, with the Second Congo War in particular considered to be one of the deadliest conflicts in history. The M23 and Rwandan troops are moving farther into the province of South Kivu, according to local reports on the ground. The UN and others are concerned that there could be a move on the city of Bukavu, which also lies on the Rwandan border. The DRC government has repeatedly called for international sanctions against Rwanda for backing the M23. So far, African and international diplomacy has had little impact. Secretary of State Marco Rubio told Rwanda's President Kagame that the US is deeply troubled by the fighting. Countries including the UK and Germany have threatened to cancel aid to Rwanda. But still the fighting continues. The mineral-rich east of the Democratic Republic of Congo has been dogged by conflict for more than 30 years, since the 1994 Rwandan genocide. Numerous armed groups have competed with the central authorities for power and control of the potential fortune in this vast nation. The instability has sucked in neighboring countries to devastating effect, notoriously in the 1990s when two huge conflicts, dubbed Africa's World Wars, resulted in the deaths of millions of people. Fighting escalated again earlier this year when a rebel group known as the M23 made major advances across the east. At the end of June, the US brokered a peace deal in an attempt to halt the conflict. In a rapid advance, the M23 captured a number of key cities and towns. The group's first major coup was at the end of January with the taking of Goma, a city in North Kivu province that is home to more than 1 million people. Sitting on the border with Rwanda and the shores of Lake Kivu, Goma is a vital trading and transport hub that is within reach of mining towns supplying metals and minerals in high demand. In February, the M23 also seized another important city in the region, South Kivu provincial capital Bukavu. Fighting between the M23 and the Congolese army and allied militia has continued in the region as the rebels attempt to expand their territory. Thousands of people have been killed in the conflict, while many more have been forced from their homes. At one point, the M23 threatened to target the nation's capital, Kinshasa, a city 2,600 kilometers, 1,600 miles, away, on the other side of this vast country. The M23 is led by ethnic Tutsis, who say they needed to take up arms to protect the rights of the minority group. They say that several previous deals to end decades of fighting in the region have not been respected. They take their name from a peace agreement that was signed with a previous Tutsi-led rebel group on March 23, 2009. Shortly after its creation in 2012, the M23 rapidly gained territory and seized Goma, acts that were met with international opprobrium and accusations of war crimes and human rights violations. It was forced to withdraw from Goma, and then suffered a series of heavy defeats at the hands of the Congolese army along with a UN force that saw it expelled from the country. M23 fighters then agreed to be integrated into the army in return for promises that Tutsis would be protected. But, in 2021, the group took up arms again, saying the promises had been broken. On June 27, DR Congo signed a peace deal in Washington in an attempt to halt the conflict. The agreement was signed not with the M23, whose armed forces have occupied huge areas of the region, but with Rwanda, DR Congo's neighbor. There is overwhelming evidence that Rwanda is backing the M23. Last year a group of UN experts said that up to 4,000 Rwandan troops were fighting alongside the rebels. They also said the Rwandan army was in de facto control of M23 operations. DR Congo, US, the UK and France also say Rwanda is supporting the M23. While M23 leader Sultani Makenga is a Congolese Tutsi who previously fought in the Rwandan army. The government in Rwanda's capital, Kigali, denies providing financial or military support to the M23. They say they have taken defensive measures to protect Rwandan territory. By signing the Washington peace deal, it became even more difficult for Rwanda to deny that it is involved in the conflict. The origin of the current fighting can partly be traced back to the genocide in Rwanda in 1994. About 800,000 people, mostly from the Tutsi community, were slaughtered by ethnic Hutu extremists. The genocide ended with the advance of a force of Tutsi-led rebels commanded by Paul Kagame, who is now president. Fearing reprisals, an estimated 1 million Hutus then fled across the border to what is now DR Congo. This stoked ethnic tensions as a marginalist Tutsi group in the east, the Banyamulenge, felt increasingly under threat. Rwanda's army twice invaded DR Congo, saying it was going after some of those responsible for the genocide, and worked with members of the Banyamulenge and other armed groups. After 30 years of conflict, one of the Hutu groups, the Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda, FDLR, which includes some of those responsible for the Rwandan genocide, is still active in eastern DR Congo. Rwanda describes the FDLR as a genocidal militia and says its continued existence in the DR Congo's east threatens its own territory. In February, Rwandan government spokesperson Yolanda Makolo told the BBC the FDLR wanted to return to Rwanda to finish the job, and this is why Rwanda had to defend its territory. Rwanda accuses the Congolese authorities of working with the FDLR. DR Congo denies this, but in the recent peace deal, both sides agreed to ending state support for the FDLR. The agreement also says the group should be neutralized and Rwanda should row back on its defensive measure. The agreement drawn up by the US hopes to succeed where multiple others have failed. The deal demands that Rwanda disengage its forces. Both countries refrain from supporting armed groups and instead facilitate their disengagement, disarmament, and integration. Both countries refrain from acts of aggression. However, the absence from the deal of the M23, the most prominent armed group in the conflict, has drawn criticism. Many have also noted that the agreement does not state whether the M23 will withdraw from all the territory in eastern DR Congo that it now occupies. Although the M23 did not sign the Washington deal, they are engaged in separate peace talks with the Congolese government, mediated by Qatar. The deal signed in Washington also has an economic dimension, that potentially grants the US lucrative access to the region's mineral wealth. Rwanda and DR Congo should work to expand foreign trade and investment in critical mineral supply chains, the agreement says. The government in Kinshasa reportedly offered the US access to critical minerals in exchange for security guarantees earlier this year after losing territory to the M23. DR Congo and multiple UN reports have accused Rwanda of using the conflict as a way of looting Congolese minerals, such as gold and coltan, which is used to make mobile phones and other electronic items such as cameras and inside cars. In recent years, the M23 has seized several lucrative mining areas, and a report by UN experts last December said that around 120 tons of coltan was being sent by the M23 to Rwanda every 4 weeks. Rwanda has consistently denied allegations of exploiting DR Congo's minerals. A UN peacekeeping mission has been in place since 1999. The current force, known as MONUSCO, is made up of more than 10,000 troops. However, of these, only the Force Intervention Brigade is allowed to carry out offensive operations against armed groups. It was this force that helped defeat the M23 in 2013. MONUSCO has been the target of anger from ordinary Congolese who see it as failing to do its job. President Tshisekedi, deeming the mission a failure, had asked it to leave by the end of last year. But the departure was delayed, and in December the mission was extended for another year. A military force from Southern African Development Community, SADC, a regional grouping of 16 countries, that was deployed in late 2023 began withdrawing at the end of April. It had failed to halt the M23 advance and in March its mission was terminated. This came after 14 South African soldiers were killed in January, along with several more from Malawi and Tanzania. Thank you for watching this video.